Everyone. Happy Easter. Welcome back to Off the Great Wall live show. I am Carmen.
I'm Dan. Welcome back, guys.
Yeah, so today we have a very special guest. She has her own self-care and productivity YouTube channel, and she's also the co-host and co-producer for Beauty Within, and that's Rowena Tsai.
Hello.
What's up? I've seen you before.
I've seen you both before.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Good. It's been a good Easter.
Yes.
Do you guys celebrate
No.
with family? No.
just staying home.
People wish me like Happy Easter.
Mm.
Like Happy Easter, Dan. I'm like, yeah.
Happy
I'm
Easter
down.
to you too.
Happy
Easter.
Passover. Yeah, it's Passover too. So it's got, like,
actually, I don't know what day is what, but
so whatever you're celebrating out there, happy.
Yes.
It seems like a very, and it's kind of probably ties into today. It's a very like spiritual weekend.
Yes.
So
happy fill in the blank, everyone.
All right. So today's topic is about finding yourself. And I'm just going to dive into it. So the first impression that I have of Rowena is she's extremely kind, super positive, seems like she knows what she's doing and have it all together. And then later on, I found out she's actually went through a quite rough patch. And I'm actually surprised that she was able to pull herself out of it and become who she is today. So Rowena, can you talk a bit about how you got yourself up to the point you are today?
Yes, I'd actually like to hear Dan's first impression of me first too.
I didn't know, you're friends with like my significant other, my friend,
Yes.
Our friend Felicia.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know. I was just like, oh, there's another friend.
Another friend.
I didn't know anything about you. You were just like really nice. And like my first impression was like, you're very ambitious and like go-getting. Very like savvy, like business savvy. I was like, oh, she's good at like, just from my limited contact. I'm like, she must have studied business or marketing, which I think you might have, because you gave me that vibe. Like you're very analytical. I want to hear the story about how you presented to your parents your career path, because I've never did anything like that. But that's
save that for later. Save that
for later. I'm like, wow, like you're very like entrepreneurial. That was my first impression. So I was also surprised to find out that we've all gone through, I had a rough patch in my life too, but
this is always rough.
Yeah, like
real rough.
Yeah, like mine was like small potatoes, so it's always interesting to find out where people come from and how they discover themselves.
Yes. Okay, so I think the furthest back we can go is it's something that I talk about a lot on my channel and even on Instagram, of it's kind of weird to be grateful for loss. But I think because I experienced loss at a pretty young age, when I was 17, my older brother passed away. That like threw me, I think that was what opened the Pandora's box to like all the positive things that led me to where I am today, and all the negative things that led me down a pretty dark path. Where like the positive, I would say it's, questioning life and like my purpose and why are we here? Because I think as humans, I really do believe that like there's so much more to just going to school, getting good grades, getting a good job, making money, and like living a good life for yourself. I think that's all totally fine. But I just felt that like there must be more. And then that kind of threw me on a quest to look for more and like figure out what that was. And I think because when you're 17 and then you go to college and then, there's parties, there's alcohol, there's like, substances, and there's like all of these things that like, we all, most of us maybe have been exposed to, that's like alluring and it's like attracting. And then like, throw that with just like trying to figure out who you are in your early 20s. I think all of that combined was just, it was a lot to handle, like, especially like trying to process loss and all of that too. So I think that was like the negative part of it, was like, okay, like I knew there must be more. I'm trying to look, but then like, these aren't easy questions that you're just gonna, go to sleep one night and be like, hey, like, what is my life purpose? Like, why am I here? Like, it's not going to come to you just like, overnight. So I think because I was looking, it was hard. I would like distract myself and like escape and, go do all these other things that we do as kids. And, that's fine. I think it's like a, pretty normal rite of passage. And I think it just got to this point where, at one point, this is just an open book sharing with everyone. Like I had an eating disorder, like I wasn't okay. I couldn't sleep every day until like 3, 4 a.m. I was probably depressed. And I just got to a point where I was like, Rowena, like, what are you doing with your life? And you're not happy. This isn't where you want to be. You can be, you can pull yourself out of the situation. So like, why don't you try now? And I think that was the inflection point was actually, I went to one of my professor's office hours. Like I was the worst student during this time, my senior year of college. I went to office hours. I told my professor, I was like, look, I'm not doing okay. Like, something just happened or triggered my memories of losing my brother. So like, I'm just trying to process everything. And like, I don't think I've ever told him, and I wish I could, and maybe I will one day, but he's like, oh, Rowena, there's this free writing exercise that you should try. You just sit down, write for 20 minutes. Don't think about punctuation. Don't think about anything. Just write for the sake of writing, like write what's in your heart and just like let your pen take you where you want to go. And so I sat down that day, like right after I finished the office hours, and I sat down, I began to write, and I realized I've been escaping myself and my own feelings all of these years since my brother passed. It's been like 4 years since. Wow. And so I told myself in writing, I was like, Rowena, like you need to let yourself feel, even if it's going to be like bad and it's going to be dark and it's not going to feel good for a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, like, there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. And that doing this now when you're still like early in your 20s, in the future, like future Rowena will thank you, because you're going to have to face yourself sooner or later. And I think that was my inflection point of like, okay, like I'm not happy with where I am. What am I going to do about it? It's like, okay, give myself time and like really let myself feel. And it was during this time where I started opening up myself to like, oh, like there's books, there's people, there's other things that can help me. I think, you guys talk about this a good amount off the Great Wall. We talk about this like as friends a lot too. It's like, I don't know if it's like, growing up like as an Asian American or just, I tend to keep things to myself. And I think that I can do everything on my own, which is why I like balled everything in. I was like, oh, like I can figure it out. It's going to be fine. Like I'll do it myself. But because I was like, okay, like you're going to feel, you're going to, let yourself do what you need to do so that you can come out of it. I think that opened up my mind to like, wait, okay, I can ask for help, whether it's like directly asking for help or it's, through reading books or, reconnecting with my spirituality. And I think during this time, this is like the more spiritual part, right? Like when you open yourself up to like possibilities and like, for lack of a better word, like miracles, I think that's when they come. Because one day, I think this is like New Year's of 2014, I went home and I went to school in LA downtown. It was like 25 minutes away from home. I went home, had the worst New Year's Eve. And I just like, Mom, like, can I meditate with you? And she looks at me. She's like, are you okay? Because I've never asked her like to do that, And then like that day, sat down. It's supposed to be like a 1 hour meditation, but I just did 15 minutes. But just 2 minutes in, I was in tears, like just listening to the music of the meditation music, and like I was bawling. And then I suddenly get this feeling from like the pit of my heart or like my stomach, heart, whatever. It's like a ball of sunshine's coming out. And then I just had this overwhelming feeling of like, I want to go home. And like in that specific moment, like, I was sitting at home with my mom, but I think it was more of like a spiritual home. And I think that was like another inflection point, and especially when it comes to spirituality, that reminded me of, like I grew up practicing falling Dafa with my mom, more so as a hey, child, you need to do this before you can go out and play, right? And I think as I grew up, naturally, regardless of, you know, anyone who's watching, regardless of what your spirituality or religion is, I think there's always this journey, especially if we grow up with it, that you need to come back and rediscover it for yourself and define what it means to you for yourself. So I think this was kind of like where my journey began of, you know, going back and being like, you know, what is Falun Dafa like? What does it mean to me? And do I want to practice this thing that my mom has been practicing, or do I not? I think it was through this journey that ultimately led me back to, or like led me to where I am today. Really deciding that I want to do something about my circumstances, and then not being afraid of like looking and searching and being open to looking for answers or like having questions, and then following my gut to reconnect with my spirituality.
That's deep. It's so deep. I'm just like,
I'm just gonna drink some water.
Well,
I love, I was gonna say, like, a few of the things that, you know, I picked up on is like what a lot of times people, and I don't know if it's more like Chinese Americans or Asian Americans, but we don't ask for help a lot. You know, if I feel like growing up, it's seen as like a weakness, you know, to pour your heart out, to ask people, to tell people, one, to admit that you're not okay. Because I feel like as immigrants, like immigrant parents, they try not to show weakness a lot. They try to be strong for you because you're in a new country. A lot of times when we come here, you know, like my parents came from nothing. My family came from nothing. You know, they worked hard to get to where they are at to provide a better life for me. So it's not often that you're instilled with this culture of like, oh, like going into your guidance counselor's office or college advisor, and to have the sort of, you know, the need to be like, hey, I'm not okay. Oftentimes that is like really difficult for people to say and to admit. And also the fact that you are so self-reflective at a young age to be like, oh, this is not where I want to be, even though, you know, like you said, the temptations of life were there and still are there. Those don't ever go away. Like, you know, you right now, still, there are temptations every single day. So it's not like it's over, but you have the insight to be like, oh, there are more things that are important to me, and that I want to make those things happen rather than keep going down this path. So those are amazing things. And I feel like even a lot of my friends, like, they don't talk about this stuff, you know, like most people are not talking or even thinking about, you know, what am I doing here? Like one of the first things you said is like, what is our purpose here? You know, and I love talking about that. You know, people think I'm like a happy-go-lucky kind of dude, which I am, but you know, I don't usually talk about that with people because they don't want to talk about it.
Exactly.
You know, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to bore them with these deep questions,
life philosophies.
I love these questions.
Or it's sometimes when you go out with your friends, you're like, you start talking about deep stuff, and they're like, ah, there we go again. Nah, let's not talk about that. Like, let's just enjoy some beers or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, what are you all right? And you're like, oh, like, you don't think about this stuff. I
just want to know what's going on in your heart.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for those people that are watching, you know, if you ever felt that, and that's why we do this, you know, that's why we started the channel in the first place, to more than just talking about culture, but part of traditional Chinese culture for me. And I love to ask you how you started to reconnect with your own culture. You know, part of that culture, I know Chinese culture is like to be like spiritually self-disciplined, you know, to be very introspective, to always analyze whether or not you're doing the right thing. And that's something that's been totally lost today. And where even in China, like if you live in China or Taiwan or wherever, like,
I think right now, so many people associate Asian culture as hardworking, getting good grades, getting good job, you know, the typical model minority type of culture. But I think that only really happened like more in recent decades, right? When especially with the immigration, like Dan was saying, how like, you know, because we came from hardship, we have to prove ourselves and like just put your head down and work and all that. And so we kind of lost all that looking within spirituality, self-reflection, self-improvement part of Chinese culture. So that's something that actually, like you mentioned when you said that, like, we don't say anything when there's something wrong. That's still what I'm dealing with nowadays. Like, because for me, I mean, like, you guys know me, like, I don't really tell people what my problems are. And I guess it's also like a face
your
thing.
Problems.
Yeah.
It's
What
a
are you going
face
through?
it's a face thing, right? Because like I guess like that's a whole other issue where like you just like tough it out, but like maybe like my inside is like crumbling or falling apart, but I would still, I would still get the job done. So that's kind of like my thing. But maybe like at one point I might collapse, and I never really tell people this, but at like some point I did. So that's actually last year I took like basically a year off from doing stuff. A year is a long time. Thank you to Kevin, my husband, for letting me do that. But so I think at some point you will just explode if you don't you don't do anything about it.
Yep.
Yeah. I think like a huge part of it when I look at myself and sometimes when I see in friends, let me just talk about myself because this is, it's like pride and ego.
That's why you're
right?
here. So come on.
I think like pride and ego were huge things for myself. I think like growing up in, with like Asian culture, like saving face, all of that does mean a lot. So maybe like I don't connect the two as much, but I think like for myself, like knowing myself the best, a lot of it is rooted in like pride and ego of like, I don't want to seem weak. I think especially after losing my brother, I was like, like I want to show the world that like something bad can happen to you, but you can still come out of it stronger and you can still be like more than okay. So I think that was like a huge part of what like maybe made me had the facade of like, I want to like look like, everything's okay and that like my life is perfect and blah, blah, blah. And I think like, even though, and I will probably talk about this a bit later, even though, like I found myself in that sense, because of years of trying to put on this like image and have this facade, it's pretty deeply ingrained in me that like, I feel like I need to be perfect. So like even now, I think like Carmen, it's like something that I'm working through now too, of like, I'm really open on my YouTube about like the stuff that I've been through, the stuff that I'm currently going through. But I think there's still a lot of myself that I would keep to myself of like, nobody needs to hear that. Like you figure it out on your own, or like, like if people do hear about what like you're really feeling and or like all those like layers, then like they're not going to like you as much. Which I think it's things we're all going through as humans. But I think like the first and most important thing is just like awareness, and then whether you want to slowly try to chip away at it. Yeah.
So you still have some stuff that you reserve that you don't tell people.
I think like the main things are there. Yeah, I think like I'm pretty open in terms of like what I'm going through, the struggles that I'm going through. And I think nowadays, because it's interesting. So the ways that you distract yourself in your youth can, like the thing you do to distract yourself can be different, but the reason can still be the same. So for example, before I threw myself into like partying and drinking and socializing, and I was like, okay, like let's not do that as much. And then instead I like threw myself into like spirituality and work. Cause I think for me, like work and spirituality is kind of intertwined. And I'm realizing that like, okay, well, I don't, party and drink anymore, but now I'm just like busying myself to the point where like I almost collapsed once as well. Where it's just like, okay, like even though you're doing something that's better, you're still using it as some sort of a distraction to like really figure out what's going on. Yeah.
Because you can
like
easily
really face.
Yeah. Because one can easily get lost in work and use that as an excuse, or like your craft even. And not really look inside and be like, what's really the problem?
Yeah.
What's really going on? So
but I think right now people are just so busy with their lives, right? Like it's busy is seen as good. And I mean, like I'm basically working 7 days a week. so I'm also in that, in that same route. I'm in that same path. But if we actually like, are we actually able to sit down with ourselves and not do anything. Like even when I'm alone, then I'm just on my phone or doing something, look at Instagram or like Facebook or whatever, right? Is there any actual time where we're not occupying my mind with something? I find that very, very hard to do.
Yeah.
For sure.
So meditation comes in, but even then it's hard.
Well, yeah,
Even
meditation
then, like,
is hard because my mind will be going like 100 miles per hour thinking about everything.
Yeah.
It's a good indication of like, okay, how calm can you be? You know, because when you're trying to be calm and the thoughts race in,
when you
like,
try to be calm,
Yeah.
that's already
yeah.
You just need to be like water. You don't try to be, you just are.
Yeah. You ask.
Okay. All right. So like
You're
talk
the
about
host. You ask.
Oh no, you're the host too. We're all hosting. Okay. So you talked about you know opening up on your channel, although you still have a little bit reserved, but to me that's still a lot. So how do your parents think about this?
Well, for the most part, I think mom and dad are both very supportive. They might even see this live pop up on their feed. They are always the first to be like, you know, we have a family group chat. My dad will be like, hey, did you see like Rowena's new video? My mom's like, yes, I already watched it. Or like my dad will be like, ooh, I watched it first. So they're very supportive. There have been a few times where my mom's like, do you think you're sharing too much? Like nobody needs to know that much. But I was like, well, like I still think I'm very conscious and intentional with how much I am sharing. I think a lot of because another thing that Dan, you just mentioned earlier is people don't talk about this as much, right? Or like they don't really talk about these deeper things or topics like, you know, what is my purpose and why am I here on earth? So I think that's actually one of the main reasons why I wanted to start my channel. It was like a hypothesis that I had that was like, I wonder if people out here in the social sphere or like on the interwebs, would they be interested or would they find content like this helpful? So like that was one of the main reasons why I did start. And with that, like mom, sometimes would be like, do you need to share all that? But overall, they're very supportive. And then I think I tried to do a good job of sharing very openly about specific things, but then I still try to keep my personal life personal as much as I can.
Right. And you should. You know, we still need that part of us that's personal.
The separation is important.
I think it's healthy to be separate. Yeah.
For sure. Yo, Nick's been leaving some good comments. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
I've been trying to read and listen at the same time, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm like my eyes like
It's funny because I think your parents are like my parents, very supportive. You know, they were fine with me. Like they wanted me to be like a musician and an actor, which is like so
rare.
So rare for Chinese parents to be like, yeah, do art. What? You don't make money in art? Yeah, like hold on a sec. Don't worry about it. Just you'll be broke. Don't worry about it. Just go do it. Do what you love. So I think like that's inherently like we're really lucky. And sometimes we take that for granted. You know, I know like similar to you, I also rediscovered myself right at the end of college because of also my mom, you know, and it's very similar to you, just kind of looked at myself and, you know, like, is this what you want to do? Do you want to party? You know, I was a party animal in college, you know, like
I can still see it now.
No,
you still are, just in different ways.
Yeah, like Saturday night, I'm in my house partying, like, woo, you know, and you know, like, you know, I don't realize that, you know, my parents were so supportive, and I had every opportunity to really, you know, to help myself get out of that situation. But it wasn't until I wanted to, like you, like I actually wanted to get out. I just didn't quite know how. I didn't have any counselors to talk to. You know, my friends were not really helpful in that sense. But yeah, like eventually, you know, I think if you have the heart to do it, like you're like, it was kind of like a mini miracle, you know, when you're talking to me, like I'm getting chills, like, oh, you're meditating and crying. Like you can't explain stuff like that.
No,
like that stuff happens. So you're like, whoa, what's going on with me? And I really do feel like there's some sort of like supernatural aspect of, you know, spirituality where your wishes can be answered, you know, because it's otherwise it's like, who's in charge? Like, it's not me, it's not you, you know, like, so that,
something's happening though.
Yeah. But I guess for more about, you know, discover what would you say, like, I guess you're ethnically Chinese. Like, what about specific Chinese culture that you feel like you've really discovered that you didn't know before that's helped you a lot?
I think one thing we talked about on the Friends Next Door podcast
Oh my God.
is plug.
Come on, Kevin, plug. Where's the
You
plug?
plugging my
Hurry
podcast?
up.
Yes,
that's crazy.
There you go.
yes.
You plugging my podcast? Yo.
So we actually have one on what is it? Boy to Man? What is the name of that podcast?
It's how
Boys to Men, isn't that the
No,
the
like
singers?
the episode title.
oh my God, I should know the exact title. My bad. No, it's like how boys mature into men and like the
Yes.
signs of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So in
I thought you guys talking about the group.
Oh no. So in that episode we talked about how I think like nowadays there's just, masculinity, toxic masculinity, there's like all of that, right? And then feminism, what that all means, that's a whole nother conversation we can get into another time. But I think these days, like when I learned about traditional Chinese culture and like the roles of a man and the roles of a woman, and when I say roles, it's not like you need to do this or you need to do that. It's more from like even a spiritual realm of like there's yin and there's yang. There's like the men were in charge of like the external world and women were in charge of the internal world. So that's like yang, it's like, external energy, extroversion, all of that. And then the yin energy, it's it's softer, it's gentle, but there's still strength in being soft and gentle. I think like learning all of this and hearing all of this really helped me look at myself and like my position in this world, me as a woman and like how I should woman and like, what are the things that I should do. It helped me see things through that lens. And it just, to me, it made a lot more sense as to what it was back then and kind of where we got to where we are now. And just figuring out and picking and choosing which of these philosophies like felt the most natural to me. Yeah. I think that's like the most important thing. Cause I think like growing up, from MTV, from music videos, from like entertainment, like we've been taught to be a certain way. And it wasn't until really reconnecting with like, oh, so there's like all of these philosophies and all of these sayings and all of these like ways to live from like back in the day that like, our parents, I'm sure, have instilled in us over the years as well. That's like, oh, like that actually feels a lot more natural to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, because what you're saying is very deep, and I'm just trying to reflect on like what you were talking about. And like I've always grew up like a tomboy. That's the thing. Like right now, I'm still very like rough or like not feminine and all that. So, but then like from there, you still understand not what you're supposed to do or not what the roles are, but then kind of like it's just more, I don't know how to explain
context, right? I think it's just more context of like, it's not just a black or white thing or like you need to do this or you need to do that or like, like this gender is bad and this gender. I think it's like learning how to see the gray in between like black and white and then figuring out like where I feel the most like drawn and connected to. Yeah. Because yes.
Sorry, I was gonna say, does that mean, Carmen, Kevin is feminine? Your significant other?
No, actually,
if you're masculine, is he feminine? I just want to make sure we're clearing that up.
I don't think like.
Is that what you're saying?
No, more like bossy and annoying. Let's just say that way.
Okay. Just checking.
But the thing is that he just lets me be bossy and annoying, but he stands on his own ground.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And then so sometimes when we have not really a fight.
Dan, take notes.
You should take note. So sometimes when I get pissed or whatever, I do something stupid, he doesn't say anything. And then I'm like, oh crap. and I kind of reflect. I know, but then he doesn't say anything. That's the thing.
We're getting I try.
Oh, you're cutting off.
Oops, sorry guys.
Okay,
no, my internet.
Good.
Okay. No, I got in trouble though for not saying anything the other day, so I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. But anyways, that's like a whole nother
I think we need to do a live on that.
That's a whole. I don't even know.
Relationships.
Like I'm trying to take notes, and I think the older I get, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do anymore. It's like,
listen to your heart, Dan. What does it
Yeah.
tell you?
But anyways,
But
so
as long as
Rowena,
both of you are trying to work on it together, right?
Mhm.
You're doing your own thing, she's doing her own thing, but at the end,
Yeah.
you're reaching the same goal. So maybe like I'm not an extrovert, I'm still an introvert, but I'm more like loud about it. But he's more introverted about it, but we still have the same goal of like, you know, having a trustworthy, a good relationship. So at the end of the day, we'll still meet at some point. So as long as you and Yi still have the same goal, then it's fine.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I forgot to mention with like the yin and the yang. It's balanced, right? Like within yin there's yang, and within yang there's yin, right? So it's like it doesn't matter, like it's just so long as everyone kind of is like moving back and forth in harmony, that's what is most important. Like sometimes I feel like, you know, it's possible for me to be more like assertive or like aggressive, and then my partner, my boyfriend would just like, you know, I'm just like, let me do my thing. And then vice versa. It's like, oh, if he really wants something, then I'll let him do this. So it's kind of like a very beautiful dance of harmony and balance. And it's when it's out of harmony, where there's like conflict or arguments or disagreements.
Yeah, I feel like that definitely helps me too, to, you know, thinking about any situation, whether or not it's me and Yi, or if it's me and a coworker, or even a friend or a stranger or whatever, you know, like there's times when we're going to run into hardship and disagreements. That's life. And instead of just having that, I call it's like having road rage all the time, you know, because it's so easy nowadays, you know, to like just really fast get super turned up, like on the street if somebody looks at you wrong, and you know, or like if a coworker treats you wrong, like, or if your wife yells at you, you know, it's like so easy to just be like, I'm just gonna manifest what I'm feeling right now, rather than take a step back and ask yourself, you know, what, like, hold on a second, I can control my feelings, right? Yeah. And I could assess whether or not this is right or wrong for me to just retaliate or blow up. And I find that when I don't do that stuff, I'm actually happier. You know, like blowing up and retaliating might get you initial sort of like payback,
like instant gratification versus like long-term fulfillment.
Yeah. And like nothing good ever comes out of that. Whereas I think, you know, a lot of times in my job, I might say the wrong thing, or I might say something and I didn't mean it to be not the case. And I have to face the music with clients, and that's really tough. And so sometimes I'm like, how do I deal with this situation? Because it's easy for my peers to just be like, oh, whatever, like, who cares? Who cares? Like, they'll never think, you know, just walk away. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to be a good person here, you know, and I made an honest mistake. And, you know, but basically like trying to like muster that courage and strength to admit that you did something wrong. And usually it turns into a good thing. Or even like if somebody does something bad to me, like they might take some business from me, you know, conventional wisdom would be like, oh, just take something from them, like eye for an eye, you know. But when I think of like traditional Chinese culture, it's okay if somebody takes something from you. Like, it's okay. You know, we're taught that, no, it's not okay. Get yours all the time. And it's like, well, hold on. It's like, take a step back. It might be like, maybe like in your past life, you owed that person something. And that could be true between like couples, between friends, you know. So I think like a lot of those spiritual aspects has helped me like just become happier. I think like in the long run, just, you know what I mean? Like not sweating every little thing every time.
I think for me, it's more about like trying to control my thoughts and what comes out of my mouth. Like, well, at home, obviously with Kevin and all that, I say whatever, and he's my husband, and he has to take it. That's his job.
That's the duty of a husband.
That's my job too.
That's your job. But like, for example, at work, when someone makes a mistake, immediately my thought is like, oh, how can you do that? You're so blah, 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 blah. And then like, did you do that on purpose? La, la, la. Like, that's like the first thing in my head. But then like later on, but then when I think about these negative things, I try to like bring it back to like, hey, wait a second. Maybe that person's also going through something in their lives. And, you know, like you kind of want to think of someone as, that like, it's like, how do you say it? Like, you want to think of them as someone that's like always striving to be better. And
Right.
it's not like, and it's not like everyone is like this level of like that you're expecting them to be, right? Like as a perfectionist. So, when they do something that might be wrong or whatever, they might probably already feel really bad themselves. So like, if you're also like berating them on top of that, then like, then there would obviously be conflicts. So I'm trying to be more kind, but like for me, like, I guess like usually the first thought is like, oh, blah, 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 like, why are you doing this? Why are you so stupid? And also this competitive mentality, like, oh yeah, I'm always right, you're wrong. It's just I always find myself thinking these things, but I don't say it. But I catch it and I'm like, hey, wait a second, I shouldn't even think that of someone, because those people usually don't have ill thoughts against you, or they're not doing it wrong on purpose, right? So so how to be more kind is something that I'm working towards.
Yeah. I think, one thing that I feel like we've all kind of lost touch with, it's like there's value and virtue in restraint, in a sense that like cultivation of speech or like cultivation of thought, right? Like, oh, before I say something, like, do I really need to say it in the way that I was going to say it? And doing things, it's like, okay, am I doing things because I want to like feel good right now and like feel happy right now? But even though I know I'm going to feel terrible, like, tomorrow or like a week from now or a month from now, it's like, as Dan, you mentioned, it's like long-term versus short-term. And also, I think we've grown up because maybe social media, maybe technology, it's like, I want everything right now. And then that has made myself included, like, I just, I find myself sometimes being more like a lot more impulsive than I'd like, but it's all things we're working on.
Now let's move back to you being a YouTuber.
Yes.
Did you ever imagine yourself to be doing this full time, or this is your life?
For now.
Well, okay. I think another thing, like growing up with the internet, with like Zynga, GeoCities, like building your own website since we're like, I don't know, in middle school or elementary school, I think like almost all kids at one point, maybe not all, but a lot, would be like, I want to be a blogger. I think this is like back in like high school, middle school, right? I'm like, oh, I want to be a blogger and like fashion blogger or like beauty blogger. And I think like I've honestly tried 5 times or more on separate occasions to start a blog, but none of those ideas, like, I don't think that they encapsulated the essence of like who I really was. So just like posting about fashion or posting about clothes, even though it's something that I do genuinely love, I don't think it was enough for me. Like, it didn't mean enough for me to keep going. So I think it's like when I really, came out of a really dark spot, I was like trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. I was like, what if I talk about this? Like, let's see where it goes. So I think even then it was, like, there's this message I want to share. What is the best medium and what's the best way to share it? And I've talked about this in some of my previous videos of like, before starting on YouTube, I like went through a year's worth of Fast Company. It's this like technology business magazine. I went through like a year's worth of all the magazines, of all the issues. And I was like, okay, like, where is like tech heading? Where's the entertainment industry heading? Where is like media and like, what is the future of content? It's like, video's been a thing. It's going to continue to be a thing. Advertising industry, like, money follows where the eyeballs are. So like, okay, like, why not try YouTube for a few years? If it works out, great. If it doesn't, at least I like learned about production or like how to create videos, so that could help me if I wanted to eventually move into more of like a production entertainment sphere. And at the same time, like, advertising, like, because I am talking to like brands, that can also help me either develop relationships or kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes. So I think like, did I think that I was going to be doing what I'm doing right now 10 years ago? No, absolutely not. Like, I don't even know what I thought I was going to be doing. I think I wanted to be an event planner, of all things. That was like my high school, college, high school, like, job search thing. So yeah, life's pretty wild.
And well, you're also doing not just your own channel, right? You're also doing Beauty Within. So how do you manage all that?
Just sun's in my face. Sorry, guys. I'm just like on this side. I don't. It's really hard. It's really hard to balance, as I'm sure you know, Carmen and Dan. I'm sure we're all juggling like a bunch of things. I think what I've learned, like the perfectionist side of me has learned over time, is just to roll with the punches, go day by day, even like week by week. I do my best to plan, you know, a month ahead of time, but having done this for the past 5 years, I've now learned that things will happen. It's inevitable and like, it's okay. And sometimes done is better than perfect. I think before, especially going to business school for undergrad, it's like things need to be perfect. There can be 0 mistakes in your emails, or else like you will be canceled for the rest of your life and nobody will want to do business with you. So like coming from that, I was like, oh, like, you know, everything needs to be a specific way. I need to look like this and it needs to be perfected. So I think like over the years, it's just like slowly being like, it's okay. You know, just do your best. Sometimes if you don't post every week, like it's fine. If there's a mistake in your video, just let it go. You don't need to take off the whole video, re-export and re-upload. Like it's fine. It's not the end of the world. Yeah. Just learning to go with the punches and trying my best. And also not having a social life. I think actually that is one of the that is like the most because it really is, you know, in your life it's like with work, social life, sleep, you know, or like when you're in school, like study and good grades, sleep or social life, like pick 2. I think you really can only pick 2.
I mean, I'm really impressed with like, you know, where you came from and where you've gotten to, and obviously where you're going to be at. Because you know, when I met you, I was doing like full on off the Great Wall. Carmen had already gone back to Canada, and I was knee deep in production every day. And I think at that point, you know, at first it wasn't a job, right? Carmen and I started the channel like, I mean, for me, I had another job, so it was just from our passion to like share Chinese culture, like traditional Chinese culture, through laughs and skits and food and all that stuff.
They're pretty good. They're still racking up views too.
I mean, anyways,
chopsticks versus fork. I don't.
Like, yo, people still be watching that stuff. Awesome.
Yeah, every day there's 15,000 people watching that.
I can't believe it.
That video. I'm like, I don't. Like, okay, great.
And when I met you, you know, I think you were like, what you're saying is you're trying to figure out where you are in that equation, and obviously we're still trying to figure that out, all of us. But I think it's amazing that, you know, the 3 of us have done and still continue. Like Carmen and Kevin still have their own channel, the cooking channel that they started a year ago, and then on the side they do all this production. You have essentially 2 channels that you're like heavily involved in. I'm just doing this with you guys. I'm like, hey, let's do a podcast.
You have a podcast.
I don't got time to edit video anymore. You know, so it's so interesting that the 3 of us are in different parts of our lives. We've all at some point intersected, but also have done similar things. And it just shows you that where it's like we're still in this journey, you know, and let's not see everything as just like, oh, how many, you know, a lot of times when people do YouTube or try to do YouTube or try to do whatever, a blog, it's like, how many views do you got? How many did it? How many? And you completely forget the why, you know, like, why are you doing this? Why are you even doing this in the first place? You know, like there's a reason why somebody picks up a camera and then invests all this time and energy into it, you know? So I think that's so cool that the 3 of us at one point have done it. And then to continue for me, like, I feel like I'm an outsider. I watch both of you guys keep on going with, you know, with all this amazing content. So to me, I'm like, man, this is crazy. It's like 2021. We're still in it and evolving with the different medias that are out there, and like continuing to connect with people. Like that's literally like the basis, right? We're like connecting with people. There are people watching us and typing at us and relating, or, you know, so I think that's really cool.
Well, you mentioned 2021, but I want to look forward. Like, what what do you have, like, what is your end goal actually? Like, are you gonna, I mean, continue with YouTube? Like, are you gonna be YouTuber
She's
for life?
quitting
Like,
tomorrow. This is her
what
goodbye
is,
video. Peace out.
so what is your, like, what, I mean, like, I'm not gonna say, oh, I'm only gonna do YouTube for 5 years or whatever, but like, what do you see yourself doing, just say in like the next 5 or 10 years?
I'm not really sure. To be honest, I think this is like the beauty also of taking things day by day. I think before, you know, especially like if you love planning, it's like you have a 1 year, you have a month by month plan, you have a yearly plan, you have a 5-year plan, you have a 10-year plan. I think I've learned that like big picture, it's, you know, helpful and important to know generally where you're going and what your future holds. But, you know, that also changed. So like, it's okay. But to stop avoiding your question and just answer it, I'm not really sure. I don't really know.
Good, because I don't know either.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to like learn more about production. So like for Beauty Within, be more like behind the camera and like helping produce things versus being in front or like while still being on front.
We were kind of talking about this earlier off camera. I want to know, like, because you chose, what did you study in school? Did you choose entrepreneurship?
Yeah,
As a
business,
major?
entrepreneurship. Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing. Maybe we're just
I didn't
too
know
old.
either. I thought you were like in a make your own major kind of program.
Yeah, lol.
But so
No,
you were
yeah.
saying, like, you had to you treated your career like pitching your parents like a pitch deck, like for investors. I thought that was like the most interesting thing ever. Can you imagine, like, tell us about that, like going to your parents and be like, this is what I
don't
want
even
to do.
tell my parents what I do. I just do it.
Like,
yeah.
I
think like that's what I used to do. Just like I did whatever I want. My mom and I feel so bad till this day, just the way that I treated that poor woman. But like when I was young, like high school, college, when I was like wild, I literally like could not care less about whether I tell her what I'm doing. But I think it's like when I came around, I was like, okay, well, to be a better daughter, because like it's like this whole thing of like rediscovering yourself, like who do I want to be as a person, who do I want to be as a daughter, and all of these things. So when I thought about that, I was like, okay, well, you know, I kind of want to take 6 months off after I graduate to figure out what I want to do. That's like so unconventional because of where I grew up and the friends that I had around me. Everyone was doing like investment banking, consulting, like management consulting, accounting, like they all were going to like the big four. And I was just there being like, I want to take time off. And my mom's like, yeah. My mom's like, well, okay, but like, do you have a plan? Because I think like my parents have been so awesome in a way that ever since my brother and I were young, it was always less about like get good grades and like do all these things and more about like be a good person. And I think because of that, like they're like, okay, like you do what you want to do, but like have a plan and like be responsible for yourself. So I think this is actually something that I did like before where I wanted to study abroad. And my mom's like, no, I wanted to go on a Euro trip with my friends after graduation. My mom's like, why? Like, why do you want to go? And like back then it was like, you know, living under your parents' roof, like she was still financially supporting me a little. Right. So she's like, okay, well, like, tell me why. And I like I made a PowerPoint presentation of like, you know, I like put my friends and I like our faces on this like little car. And then there's like the first slide. And I was like, oh, you know, I want to, here are all the places we're going. Here's what I think I'll like gain from it. And like, well, all these things.
Wow.
Right. And then after the whole presentation, my mom was like, okay. She's like, oh, this looks great. Like, sure, you can go. And then she looks at me and oh my God, the sun's in my eye. But she looks at me and she's like, Rowena, you know what you're looking for. Like, if you can't find it here, you're not going to find it anywhere, right? I'm like, I'm like, okay, mom, I just want to have fun with my friends. Yeah. But that was profound. So that was like the first time I did something like that. So like this time around, my mom was like, hey, do you have a plan? I was like, well, I will come up with the plan. So the plan was, you know, take 6 months off to figure out what I want to do. If I, by the end of 6 months, have not found something or like still am just floating, then like I'll go back and, you know, go find a corporate job. I think back then, I think it's definitely harder now. I mean, I think it's always been hard. The job market is pretty competitive. It's like, whatever. Like, I think I know myself well enough to know that I can go back to that. Right. But if I never gave myself the 6 months to try and to explore, then when I'm 80, I'll probably think back and be like, what if? And I think like, because of what I experienced when I was younger with loss, like I live my life, try to prevent like the what ifs and the should haves, could haves, would have. Like if I want to say something, that's nice. And I'll say it. If I want to do something, then like I would rather do it than not. So I went to my mom with like a presentation of like, this is my plan. Do you like it? Wow. And she's just like, oh yes, yeah, like do that and just be responsible for yourself.
Did you ask her for seed money? Like, yo, mom,
I think
I need some money.
Yeah, seed money in terms of like to feed me and to like allow me to stay home. So yes.
Like, if you give me X, I will return
like a donut.
5 years.
Yes.
Oh man, I would have loved. You should. If you still have that presentation, that's like when you give your first TED talk. That's like, here's the presentation that I showed my mother.
Yes, I probably have all like the paper that I wrote up and stuff too.
That's a good video idea.
It is.
All right, so let's turn the tables around. I asked Rowena to ask Dan and I some questions, and you guys who are watching us can also answer if they are easily answerable. So go ahead, Rowena. I'm a little nervous now.
Okay, I'm just gonna go straight into it because I feel like you guys.
Do I need a pen? Do I need a pen?
No. The first question is just what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? I'm gonna go right now.
You go, Dan.
Nothing. Dude,
lucky.
I hit the bed and I am asleep within 2 minutes.
You're so lucky. Is it a dude thing?
No.
Like I think guys, a lot of guys can sleep like I'm mid-sentence talking with Kevin in bed and he falls asleep.
Like I think I'm gonna try to interpret why you're asking me that. It's it's basically saying like what it might not for me like going to sleep is easy, but what's like on my mind a lot. You know, and I guess there's been periods in my life where for me it always goes back to I always have like why am I here? Like I want to do something and I want to affect change for the positive. Like I want to affect people, you know, for the positive. And when I'm not doing that to my to my fullest, that's when I get antsy during the day. Cause I have no problem with work. I've always had a job. I've had a job since I was like 16 years old. I've always had some sort of job. Right. And I never had a problem with my job. It's when I'm not living to my fullest potential. For me, what that means is I've been given a lot of gifts. You know, I firmly believe that everybody is given gifts, talents, right? It's how you use them in your life that kind of is, you know, these decisions, right? So I know that I've been given certain talents. I'm really good at certain things. I'm really bad at certain things, right? I'm really bad at organizing, really bad. I forget a lot of stuff. You know, like I procrastinate, things that just shouldn't be like, I'll never procrastinate something I need to do, but like something small I might procrastinate and then it festers and it becomes like a big thing, you know? And then I'm like, why didn't I just take care of that 5 seconds ago? So those are kind of things that keep me up. It's like, you know, am I living my life to the most potential of me? Not see, this is different. It's not, am I living my best life? No, I don't care about living my best life. I'm the most happiest dude. Like I'm so grateful for everything that I have, like my friends, my family, my loved ones. Like I'm not the richest dude, but I'm so happy, right? So it's more like I have the privilege of feeling happy a lot and not having things weigh on my mind. I got to be able to like give back somehow, you know, because otherwise, what's the point of just being happy? Like I've already achieved happiness. A lot of people are not happy, but I'm happy all the time. So I want to be able to give something back. So that keeps me up at night.
I think for me, I did have a lot of problems sleeping before. Recently, I've been better. Maybe because I'm doing things that I feel like it's more fulfilling for myself. That's kind of like what Dan is saying. But before what's keeping me awake is more like job stresses. Like, this project, that project, what I'm gonna do, and then like just kind of like thinking through the day, and even like the conversations that happened before, and then all of a sudden like the conversations from like a year ago, and then like from back when I was a kid, and I'm like, why am I thinking about this stupid stuff?
Can relate.
So all that stuff. But now I guess I'm just so tired. I also sleep well. But like I think it's also like a more a little more relaxed, because I know that what I'm doing is let's just say right.
Yep.
And then after even though it's more work, more busy, but now that I'm, I guess, like happier with what I'm doing, then I could sleep better. So even though like I was saying before that I took like basically a year off, like a sabbatical thing, like during that time I didn't really sleep well either, even though I'm not really doing much. Wow. I think that's also because like then I have more time to think and try to figure out what I'm supposed to do. Then that's less sleep because my mind is racing more.
Yes.
But now that I'm like, okay, every day I do this, and this, and then I'm okay. Then I don't need to think more. Then it's okay. So I think I'm in a better spot right now. So yeah.
Part of the thing is, so like for going back to like traditional Chinese culture, I'm a firm believer in like what's yours is yours. In that, I'm not saying if I just stop doing something, money will come. Like you still have to work hard, do things with fairness, and like not over pursue. But I'm like, dude, how much money I make in my life, that's just there already, you know, like, and as long as I'm okay with like what I have, I feel like what you're saying, Carmen, with the job, it's like, it can be daunting for everyone to be like, okay, how am I going to support myself? And I guess for me, it's like looking back, being like, all right, well, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do it smartly, and I'm going to trust that I can at least pay my bills. It kind of, you know, so I sleep a little better, you know, like, but anyways.
So you guys both touched on happiness a good amount. And I guess like success in some ways as well. So how would you, like, what does success mean to you guys?
You go first, because I took the last one.
I don't know. Like I think before when I was younger, like maybe like around high school and all that, I never like you guys, my parents never really pressured me into doing anything or being a doctor or whatever, but I gave myself the pressure. And it's kind of different too, because I was in Australia and I was like one of the only Asians in my school. It's not like I have all these like competitive Asians around me. I was basically like a big fish in a small pond, let's put it that way. But I still gave myself a lot of pressure to be like number one, to be like A, and do like, you know, get like the 99th percentile or whatever. And I did achieve all that. And to me, I was like, oh yeah, I need to like go to university and then get a good job and blah, blah, blah. Like back then that was success to me. And for a long time, I thought that was. And then, but the thing is that I never really took that path. And then in a way, I was kind of, during that time, I remember I was kind of regretting that I didn't take that path, because I actually wanted to be an engineer, like, you know, whatever, right? I mean, I actually genuinely enjoyed math. I actually genuinely enjoyed math. Let's just say it that way. So I wanted to be an engineer, but then I remember once my mom was like, oh, do you want to just like work for someone, or do you want to influence people? Not influence as in like an influencer, but kind of like be able to like spread the word, or like, you know, let people kind of like help people think in, I don't know what's the right way, like let's just say influence. Yeah. So and then when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, because like being an engineer, like even though I like it, it's more like from a selfish point of view, like, oh, I want to make a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. I even was thinking about going to like the middle of Australia doing like mining engineering, which is like first year you get 100K, but that's like not for an Asian girl. Let's just put it that way, just all like burly rough dudes. So I even like thought of that. But later on, I'm like, yeah, what's more meaningful? What can actually reach more people? And then that's why I started to look into media. And that's how I got into like, I did a lot of media production, and then ended up doing like Off the Great Wall with Dan. And it's interesting because like when we were doing YouTube, I also didn't think of YouTube as like a business. I just thought of like, oh, it's a good way to spread the word and let people know about the culture. And I in a way, even though I really liked it, I really thought it was meaningful, but I also felt like, oh, this is not a career path. Because you know, like what respectable person will be a YouTuber? Come on. so that was like kind of like that was like back in 2012, right? So that was a very different landscape back then. And then later on, you know, I stopped doing YouTube and I went to Canada and I became a production manager, and I learned a lot of stuff like, you know, working on set and all that stuff. And then eventually I worked with a marketing company and events company, and I learned tons there too. But throughout all that, I felt very empty. Even though I did learn all these professional skills, I met a lot of professional people, and yeah, like maybe just say like societal, like in society, I'm higher, but more than like a YouTuber. but I wasn't happy. So that's why up to that point, I was just like, that's why I took it was only last year that I took the year off. So basically I was like in the professional world for like 5-6 years, and I was just not happy.
Hey, during that year, you had some dope ass, dope, dope.
This is
plants.
a PG.
Sorry, guys. Dope plants. My bad.
That's also me trying to be like, okay, this is a retirement life. Let's just plant some garden, do some gardening.
I loved your plants. I loved your plants and fruits so much. That's what I was like, oh man. Every time like, oh my God. That's what you were doing last year.
Yeah, I did a lot of planting. Those were like my babies. Yeah. Those were my babies.
But anyway, now garden of
better ship me some tomatoes this year.
But well, now I'm back on Off the Great Wall. This is obviously not my full-time job, but this is important to me. But I also do some other work on some other projects that's also important to me as well. It's doesn't pay as much as what I was making before, but I'm actually happy. But I work a ton more.
Yep.
Let's just say it that way. But then in my mind it's like, okay, I guess that's more successful, right? Because now that I'm happy, I can sleep at night, then that's good. But then in terms of finance, I'm still trying to figure it out. But you know, we'll figure it out eventually.
There
you go.
I agree with 100% everything you just said. It's not measured in it's not measured in money. It's measured in how you feel about what you're doing, and that's success. I want to add one short, quick thing. Two things. One is, I think it's impossible to measure success while you're still alive. I think that you're successful if after you pass, people had positive things to say about you. That's it. Short and sweet. So for me, and it doesn't have to be the world. It could be like one or two. It could be just like small group of people. As long as they can say positive things about you, and that not like super, like actually have thought that like you helped them in life, not like, you know, giving them money or whatever, but just like, oh, that person was a good person. I think I had great experience with that person. I might have learned something from that person. I think you were successful. And I think like, for example, like my mom, she was not rich. She was essentially a starving artist. Her art never sold more than a few $1,000s. I mean, in art, that's not a lot of money. And not often. And she died without a lot of money in the bank. But I think when she passed, I think there were thousands of people who were like, wow, that woman actually helped helped me as a person. And then I was like, my mom was successful. You know, she I didn't get any money. I didn't want any money. You know, like she raised a nice boy. Hopefully I can live up to it.
Very guai.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, we had it like you know, we had like our tough times, but you know, like to me, that's like, wow, like the people that she affected. I was like, man, that's successful without, you know, anything monetary. She had no followers on Instagram, you know, like, and from the outside, people might be like, oh, well, she got divorced. I'm like, well, that's not her choice. But anyways, like, you know, like on the surface, it doesn't look great. It's like, oh, she had a kid, she divorced, she died, you know, she wasn't like a famous artist, like with the name, like a legacy. But I'm like, man, she was happy before, and people looked at her like to me, that was a successful woman. So that's my definition of success.
All right.
Great question.
Thank you for these
question.
great questions. So where can we find you, Rowena?
Everywhere, and by everywhere, just YouTube and Instagram. You can find me at Rowena Tsai.
All right. Thank you so much. I had such a great time talking to you.
Likewise.
It's just like releasing so much stuff
Mhm.
that I usually don't talk about online. So
I think we
guys.
need a session for Carmen to unload her problems.
Yes.
Oh man. Do I really want to air out this dirty laundry online? I don't know if people want to see this.
Just omit the names, like make up names, but like open it up, open the floodgates.
It's mainly my problems though, so it's me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. And
Thanks,
I will
Rowena.
see you.
Thanks, Carmen.
Wherever, like online. Oh, and thank you so much for watching. We were so deep in this conversation, I didn't even look at the comments.
I was trying to read,
back
so I read
and read the comments.
Great comments. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for participating.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Steven, Stefan. Oh, Thomas.
Steven and Stefan.
Wudan, Billy, Grace,
Lots of people.
Trevor.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Julian.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.